Welcome to Life Burst. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Matt. Well, from crisis to service, you won't want to miss today's story.
Yes, welcome to Life Burst with Matt and Sarah. And today we are chatting with none other than Chris. Thank you, Chris, for coming in on today's show to share a burst of your life with us. Now take us back to the very beginning. Where did life start out for you, Chris?
I was born in 1945, about 6 weeks before the war ended, and I'm the eldest of 4 daughters in the family. For a short time after the war, we actually lived in the Springbank Army camp. My father was in the army.
Where was that?
That was at Springbank, very close to the repat, where the repat is now.
Okay, yeah.
And of course, it's not there now.
In Adelaide, yeah.
I can vaguely remember it being like Nissan Hut type things. Mm-hmm. The other girls, I'm the eldest, and the other girls don't remember being there at all. But then we moved probably when I was around 3, and we've got a housing trust house at Morphettville. So we moved in there.
Right.
Okay.
Being the eldest of a number of girls, did that come with great responsibility for you?
Well, it does a bit. The eldest one always gets into trouble when the others do stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there some stories along the way?
Yeah, there's a few stories along the way. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so you got this house. What did that feel like to have a house for the first time in your life?
It was quite exciting, really, because that was a very new area, and those houses were just dumped in there. It's between Marion Road and the racecourse, and Crossroads and Marion Road were the closest roads. It was only just like bush tracks, really.
Right.
And us kids had a great time there because there was box lawns and paddocks and all sorts of stuff. We used to go down to the edge of the racecourse, and there was a creek along there now, which is not, it was then, but it's not there now, and catch tadpoles with the boys next door. So there was a group of 6 double housing trusts on our block, and I remember saying, some of the adults saying at one stage, there was 96 children lived in those 6 double units. So
Wow.
so there was plenty of people to play with and plenty of area to do it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it was quite interesting.
So what's now dense suburbia?
Absolutely.
At the time,
Yes,
was not.
yeah.
It was. There was plenty of room to play.
Yes, and a sad part now is that all those housing trust houses are gone. The one that we were in, Mum and Dad stayed there obviously for a long time, and it was beginning to crack and fall down. They just were thrown up really after the war for emergency housing, and they're all gone, so it's a bit sad.
Yeah. And how long did you stay there as a family?
Oh, so we all stayed there until we were married and left home, us girls. And Mum and Dad were there. Dad actually passed away while they were still living there. Mum was there 48 years before we decided that unit, and then we moved her into a unit at that stage. So we were there for a long time.
Right. You were saying it's a double
Housing trust unit.
Yeah.
Yes.
What is that? I don't know what that looks like.
Well, there was like 2 houses together. They had an adjoining wall, and usually they were the sort of same shape. Like you both went off the verandas, and the lounge rooms were there, and the bedrooms were there. 3 bedrooms, and they weren't all that terribly big. So with being 4 of us, there was two girls in each room. Which is different today. Children have to have their own room, sort of. Yeah, so.
Yeah.
What was it like sharing with your sister?
Oh, she was a bit of a mucker.
Right.
And we used to get into trouble because the room always looked messy. But it usually wasn't my fault.
Wasn't
I was
you?
the neat freak, and yes, and she'll know that. We talk about that now. So
Yeah. Sounds like my kids, except they don't take ownership. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so and schooling around the area?
yes, we did. When I first started primary school, I used to catch a bus to Plimpton, which is just on the other side on Marion Road of Anzac Highway. But by the time I got to year 2, Forbes Primary School had been built, and that was sort of a new area with lots of kids, and that's still there. just on Marion Road, there's a block of shops, Forbes block of shops, and they were there when I was a child. But on the other side, where there's now a funeral director's, it used to be a big old barn and feed lot with great big peppercorn trees.
Okay.
And it was scary. And all the boys used to tell us all sorts of stuff that was, I would shoot past there really quick.
Yeah. Memories.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So did you end up, getting together with one of those boys from the group?
No.
Okay. Okay. Well, you never know. There was
Well,
a
you
lot
just
of you
don't know.
there.
There was lots of them, yeah, but there was lots of girls as well,
Yeah.
it was all just mixed up. But next door to us, we actually had boys both sides of us. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So none of them ended up with each other.
No,
Okay.
we've all gone our separate ways. So,
Yeah.
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 Then from there, I went to Vermont Tech.
Okay.
Vermont Girls Tech, which is not there anymore either, and that's down a little bit further down Marion Road, and I was one of the original students when that opened. So,
Okay. And what did you focus on at Vermont Tech?
well, girls did home ec,
Yeah.
typing,
Yeah.
that sort of stuff. Yeah. So,
Right. Yeah.
and I did go and finish year 10, which in those days most girls left school because it was an all girls school. In either year 7 or 8, when you got to be 14, you could work. But my mum stuck out and said, no, these girls are going to have a better education, and my dad wasn't happy about that. But she did stick out, and in the long, it's paid off. So,
Right. So you're saying that when you were, obviously you did like maths and English and those types of things?
Yes, maths, English, and geography, and history.
Yeah, but there was more of a focus on those.
On the home duty type
Yeah.
stuff, and typing, because like in those days you just left school and got a fill-in job until you married somebody that would look after you, because that's how it was in those days, and there wasn't really a big choice of jobs that you could do. Be a hairdresser, shopkeeper, typist, nurse. That was sort of about all that could happen. Yeah.
And what did you want to be?
I hadn't made up my mind. I didn't want really be anything. Just bumming along, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Did you enjoy the like home ec side of things or the typing things? Did you do like dressmaking?
yes, I
and those
did.
types
Yes,
of
and I
things
did
too?
dressmaking, and I really enjoyed that.
Okay.
And I used to be able to draft my own patterns and things, and back in the long time ago. Yeah, so
So when year 10 completed, you finishing
finished
school.
school. Yes,
What
I
happened for
got
you?
a job in Edwardstown in a factory, working in the office in a factory. So I've always sort of went into office work, clerical type work. Yeah, so and then I did clerical work for Badnock's Transport too, a long time ago. They're not around anymore either. So it makes me feel old.
So that was typist positions?
Yes, so
Yeah. As a woman and myself as well, I cannot begin to imagine what it must have been like to have that pressure on you. Like you just go to school, and then when you turn 14, you just need to leave and go do
get a job.
something
Yes.
until you meet a husband who will then provide for you.
yes, yeah, that was the mentality back then. Yes.
Did you like that mentality?
But well, it was just normal. It didn't make
Okay.
any difference really. So yeah, and we usually married quite young. Like it's young to the days these days, like 18, 19. I married at 18, had my first child at 19, and I was 21 when I had my second pregnancy. It turned out to be twins.
Oh, wow.
So yes, I didn't actually know I was having twins because they didn't do scans or anything until the night before. And then they
Okay.
decided it was twins. So
Surprise.
yes,
Instant family of...
exactly 3. Yes.
Wow. Well, there's got to be some stories in that itself. Having a child for the first time is a whirlwind. It's a
Yes.
challenge.
Yeah.
And having twins must have been a challenge too. When we come back, though, we might hear from you what you're happy to share about that.
Okay.
This is Life Bursts with Matt and Sarah. See you soon.
Welcome back to Life Bursts with Matt and Sarah. Today we're chatting with Chris, and we've got to the part of the story where suddenly you have a almost 2-year-old and some twins that you didn't know about until the night before.
No.
Yeah, share it with parents or future parents like myself, if I ever get, have twins, some advice that you would, looking back now, could share with parents?
Well, when I had the twins, I wasn't really expecting twins, and we were moving house that day. So I went to hospital and had the twins, and everybody else moved the house. But that was okay. When I got home with the twins, my mum used to come one day a week and help me catch up, because it was just nappies that we washed and did all that. And then I had a lovely aunt that used to come another day a week, and maybe she'd do the ironing or something that I hadn't got to. But they were 4-hourly fed for nearly 9 months because they were premature. And so that was a bit taxing. But you do get there. It just happens, and you just get there. So
How was sleep like during that time?
not much. No, not much, because it's 4-hourly during the night as well. And it used to take probably about an hour by the time I fed both of them and put them down. And then it's only a couple of hours and the first one was awake again. So,
Yeah. And was it hard for you to sleep because the children were premature and you were afraid something might happen? Or...
Yes, yeah. I think you're on the go the whole time. I found motherhood really lovely. I thoroughly enjoyed it all, even though I was tired and busy. My husband was around a little bit because he did shift work, and so sometimes he was home to be helpful and sometimes he wasn't. So you just have to get on with it.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, if you've got through that, you can probably get through anything. So
Yeah.
Wow.
By the sounds of it.
Yes, yeah. It's a very busy time, and it always is when you've got small children. Like I had 3 under 3, so it keeps you busy. Yeah.
Right. So imagine the next few years, the family consumed a lot of the children.
Yes.
Plenty of your time. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I didn't work during those times. And when the children, Darren was almost 5 and the twins were about 2.5, we moved to Whyalla. My husband got work in Whyalla and we moved up there, moved the family up there. So.
Was that quite isolating, being far away from your
I found it really hard because it's sort of come like mum's not there anymore, aunt's not there anymore to help. But by that time the kids were pretty self-sufficient, like they were growing up a little bit. So.
That sounds like you'd gone from having all these people around you all
Yes.
the time to then like nothing.
Yes, yeah.
Who was there for you during those times?
Neighbours. There was 3 of us in a row in Whyalla that were Australian families, which is very unusual because there was a lot of people coming there after in the 70s to work from overseas, and we all just got on, helped each other, did things together. Yeah, so made a life.
Yeah.
And how many years were you in Whyalla?
Yeah.
21 altogether.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yes, 21. Yeah, it was a good place for the boys to grow up.
Yeah.
It was fairly free. They wanted to do something, get on their bikes, and they could go. It was pretty easy for them to get around. My boys all played hockey, so that kept them busy. They went to school at McRitchie Primary, and they all went to Stewart High School, which I believe is not there anymore either. It's now a big super school. So there used to be Whyalla High, Air High and Stewart, but now they're all in one big school.
That's a really big chunk of time to spend somewhere. You must have definitely formed some really good relationships.
I did, and I started work. Like once the kids went to school, once the twinnies were off to school, I got some part-time work and I started working, so that keeps you going as well.
How did that feel, being able to go back into the workforce again?
It was lovely. I enjoyed it. I've always enjoyed working in all the jobs that I've had, so and all the future ones from there. So no, it was good.
Okay. What was your first position that you had?
It was clerical. I was doing clerical work, and it was all manual bookkeeping in those days, double entry bookkeeping and things. So unfortunately, a marriage didn't last, and I escaped some domestic violence, and we've had to make a new life, but that was okay too. So.
And so that happened during your time in Whyalla?
Yes, we were in Whyalla.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And so after I'd got myself settled and in a new home and got the kids all sorted, I started working back at the Women's Refuge. I was still working as a clerical person in a paid job, but I did some voluntary work at the Women's Refuge just to help out because they'd helped me. And then from there, back in those days, you could actually start doing work like that without your qualifications and work and study after, which is what I did. So, yeah.
So you went through a huge, difficult crisis for the family, and you found support in a refuge there in Whyalla. And as you got through that, you went back and were able to then give back by supporting others who'd been through a similar thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think I was the only paid staff member that had actually been there through there as a resident, which I think gives you a bit more insight sometimes onto how you're feeling and how devastating it is. Not devastating that you're in the shelter and there was absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's just your feelings of like, here I am, this is all I've got now, so yeah, so that was a bit, and I think sometimes I understood that a little bit better than some of the other staff members, so, but I'm not taking away from their work because we all work really hard.
So did you have to leave with not much, or like?
Oh yes, actually, yeah, with what I stood up in, that was it. Yeah, so so it was a bit devastating. So it's not possible to go back and get things. So
have you been able to since, or what does that look like?
Well, no, that I just moved on from there. Yes, I just moved on from there. Yeah. So just got myself moving, got myself working again. I worked actually at 2 jobs, 2 part-time jobs, so because it still fitted in with kids going to school. And I also did home bookkeeping for small business, and I had a couple of ladies that I used to do their books for them, get them ready for tax and that sort of stuff. So that was how I sort of kept us afloat, really.
Yeah. So how long were you in the shelter for?
A month, yes.
A month.
About a month, yeah.
I've never been in that position before. So you're in the shelter until they give you a house, or until you find a house, or how does that look?
Yes, well, that back in those days, the shipyards had shut, so there was a lot of housing trust houses available, and it's just the process that you have to go through. You've got to take a few days to settle down, and then apply to the housing trust and apply for benefits and all that sort of stuff. And then it takes a few weeks for that to actually happen. But it was about a month, so yeah.
Wow. Well, that's a huge thing to have to go through. I can only imagine your world turned upside down. And not everyone would find their feet again, as you have. But it sounds like with the support of the centre, you were able to do that.
Yes, I was. Yes, and my friends, people rallied around. They got stuff for us, and all of a sudden we were okay.
I think that's amazing, the fact that you can then go back to the place that you had to go to for refuge and then help others go through similar trauma to that as well. Not many people would be able to do that. How did you get through that?
I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. But I always sort of thought that I could understand maybe a little bit more. Yeah, so.
Yeah. I think it was a good move by the sounds of it.
Yeah. Yes, it was actually, because it put me on a path that I'd never even dreamt that I would ever be on. Like, why would I do social work? I was quite happy being a bookkeeper, so, and a mum and doing all those things. So that sort of started me on that pattern. So, Yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, when we come back, we're going to hear more of Chris's story as she continues to hear what that led to and what she's doing now.
Welcome back to Life Bus with Matt and Sarah. Today we're chatting with Chris, and it's come to the part of her story where I get to ask the question that I ask most of our guests that come in. How did you meet your now husband?
Oh, actually, he was sitting on a cupboard.
Okay. So how romantic.
Yes, there was a whole group of people in Whyalla, and there was a lot of ladies that I'd palled up with that were single again.
Okay.
And we used to go out together. There was always some music somewhere and dancing and stuff. And so there was just groups of people hanging around, and he was sitting on a cupboard one day, and okay, so I wasn't really interested in remarriage. But that's it. It's done for me, So, but he eventually wore me down. He used to come and visit and have a coffee at home, and he continually asked me to go out with him. But because of my former husband drinking a lot, I let it go for several months before I said yes, because I figured I would know how much he drank by then. And my current husband doesn't drink very much, so and that was a big plus for him. He knows that.
Yes.
Okay. So we met, and then after a period of time, my former husband, only a few months after we'd done property settlement, was killed in a road accident. So he was out of the picture, and Bob's wife and him had divorced. And just as we got married, she unfortunately passed away. So he went to Sydney and brought his children back. So had my 3 boys, his 2 teenage boys, and Alison was 9.
Wow.
Big house.
Beg pardon?
Big house.
Yes, well, yes, it was a bit like that. And we were lucky that we were still in Whyalla, because there was still a lot of housing trust houses empty. And because the boys were old enough and they'd got to 3rd-year apprentices, they could rent houses. The housing trust had a rule about that, because they were better than sitting empty. And so we had to shut some out of the house because we just didn't have room. But they all kept coming home, and we'd go around and do things for them, and so it was sort of just like extended family out. Yeah, so.
Did they come home for you to do their washing and for dinner and stuff?
No, I made a rule once they did their own washing. They could use the laundry, but that was fine. It had to be left in a way that I needed it so we could all get in it. Yeah, so they did their own, yes. I was really happy to give up some washing, I can tell you.
I'm sure you were.
Yeah, so and then after a few years we decided that we would move, and we moved to Clare.
Okay.
My husband was the senior employment officer at BHP, and that wasn't employing anymore. They had shut things down and things were quite off. So we decided that it's time to move on, and we went to Clare. Found that beautiful after Whyalla. It's pretty desolate, although there's a beauty in the desert around Whyalla. It is pretty, and we lived in Clare for about 12 years. I managed to get a job there with Job Network, and while I was there I did my workplace trainer and assessor, and a lot of work that you do with long-term unemployed people involves a bit of social work. Sometimes they've got barriers to employment, so you need to work through some of those before they're ever going to get a job and stay there. So but I enjoyed doing that as well. So,
what are the types of barriers that you found?
I just think people, when they're unemployed, and it goes for a long time, because we had a catchment area that went up to Peterborough and down around, all around, they sort of get into managing on the money and doing bits and pieces, so their life's really okay. They think it's okay, but of course the government don't want to keep paying benefits, they want them to work, and so that sort of rattles their chains a little bit. And sometimes kids have got to get off the school bus at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so they can't get a job because they've got to be to get the kids and drive them home. So they're country areas. So there's some of those things. So, but we taught all sorts of things, and we certainly did lots of vineyard courses, obviously, because that's the area. And we were lucky enough to get our outcomes that the government were happy, and some of that's like seasonal work too. So that sort of gives people a bit of a chance between picking and rod tying and pruning and all that stuff. Yeah.
So did you have to go teach people how to pick and
Well, I coordinated some of that, but I certainly didn't do the teaching. We had to get some experts to do that. So there was a lot of paperwork, obviously, and then we taught job search skills, how to get a job and a resume and that sort of stuff. We also did some lifestyle stuff, because at that stage, if a single mum, her last child, turned 7, they had to do some training to get back into the workforce. That was so we used to do like really short courses. I used to teach computing, like basic computing. We used to do some sewing. We used to do cake decorating. A few things like leisure courses that would get them into the swing of things to get them studying and stuff again. So
sounds like a bit of variety in the work as well.
It was good. It was good
and rewarding.
I thought it was rewarding, and just see somebody blossom a little bit and gain a little bit of confidence in themselves, because sometimes when you're home and there's a tribe of kids and that's all you got, you sort of lose yourself. So,
and you just aren't having adult conversations either.
No. And they've got no money, so they can't go anywhere or do anything because they haven't got enough money to, it's very basic. So that gives them an outing and a learning something and they meet people. Yes, it's a social thing.
Yeah.
It's really important.
Is there a story that stands out for you from that time of you working in that area? Or stories?
I used to find that if they came in and did the cake decorating, which was just very basic, and used to make flowers and all that sort of stuff, they would then look at, maybe I can do a computing course, so, or maybe I want to go and work in the vineyards, because the girls used to as well, because that's really good. Sometimes that can work for school hours to be working in a vineyard. So then they would come onto those courses and then go on.
So it's like empowering them with a really small thing that I'm sure is difficult just for some. And then they were able to go on and
I can remember we had a workshop. They used to do welding courses and things as well for the fellas, and they'd be all huffy because they have to come in for a whole 4 weeks, and that's rock their boat a little bit. By the time you get to the end of the 4 weeks, and then what am I going to do next week now? It's finished. So that's just so
great. And by the time you were in Clare, the size of the household
we'd lost a few. They'd spread out because they got older, and we still had Alison with us. She was a bit younger than the boys. Some were still in Whyalla. Some had moved to the city, to Adelaide. So it was still the middle place. Everybody used to come and stay.
So you could put your attention more fully to your work and helping others through that as you've been doing. That's fantastic. And had you studied some social work along the way, did you say?
Yes, along the way. Yes, when I was actually working in Whyalla. Yes, so just do that bit by bit. And then I did the same with the workplace training and assessor. So then unfortunately I got leukemia, which didn't help things.
Oh, wow.
And my husband had a heart attack, which meant we were travelling backwards and forwards to Clare all the time for treatment, and I couldn't work. I was so sick. I just couldn't work. So we decided to move to Adelaide. I had a few years where I wasn't really doing a lot. I had a very supportive boss from Employment Directions, so I used to catch a train to Gawler and a day a week and and still do some training with younger children, yeah, just to keep my hand in. Yeah, so, and then a little bit later on when I was better, I actually applied for a position with Baptist Care, and I worked with teenage girls that were under the care of the minister.
Right. Well, we'll be back to explore more about what that looks like in Chris's life straight after this on Life Bus with Matt and Sarah.
This is Life Burst with Sarah and Matt. We're chatting to Chris today, and Chris, after going through a number of crises so far and working through treatment for leukemia, you moved to Adelaide and you found work with Baptist Care during that time.
Yes, I did.
Tell us about that season.
I was employed to work with teenage girls that had been under the care of the minister, and sometimes we would get them when they were around 16 and they'd been in foster care.
What does that mean, under the care of the minister?
It means they've been in foster care.
Okay.
And in several different places. One lass, well, I used to do overnights with them, which would mean I'd start work at 5 and we'd cook a meal together, do what we had to do, get up in the morning, have breakfast, and then get them to school or whatever they were doing, and basically try and teach them some life skills. I did that for a couple of years, and then I was offered a position as a coordinator, which meant I was the one that was in charge of the team.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the lasses, when I was booking her in to come in, talk to her about coming into one of our houses, I asked her, how many foster homes have you been in? And she was 16, remember, and she thought 20 or 21. And so she really hadn't been anywhere long enough to learn anything. And so the idea was that we would have her until she was 18 and try and teach her how to look after a house, pay bills, do shopping, all of that sort of stuff. Another one of our young ladies that we got, that I was in one of my teams, she'd been living on the streets for a couple of years, and families had got hold of her and told her that she needed to do this, and she was not a happy chappy. She didn't want a house. She didn't want to have to do this. But after several months, she got really house proud, and she complained to me that the workers left their cups on the sink. But it was just a chance for them to learn some living skills that they obviously hadn't had by not being in one place long enough. So those things you just pick up from your family life. You just know your mum does that, and so you got to do that, or everybody works together, and somebody takes the garbage out and somebody does something else. But if you're not in that situation for any length of time, you don't learn those things.
Yeah, wow.
I hadn't thought of that before.
Beg pardon?
I had not thought of that before, that would be a barrier to something like that.
Yes.
Just not having that around them to know what to do.
Yes, yeah. And mostly they had issues, obviously, because there's no attachment. Attachment, when you're a baby, you're attached. You get attached to your parents, you get attached to your siblings, you have that family grounding. Well, most of these young people, unfortunately, didn't get that. So that's missing in their life. So they don't really, I don't value anything, because they've never been anywhere long enough to have anything to value. So, yes.
Wow.
But I enjoyed doing that work. It was really good.
It must have been a balance between being rewarding, but also your heart would break for each and every...
Absolutely. And then I would get really mad when they didn't come home when they were supposed to. So there's a whole lot of rigmarole, like if you've got to report them missing and do all the paperwork, and then they'd rock up a couple of hours later and so you have to unreport them missing and undo all the paperwork. So
Yeah.
but that, yes. So
So you kind of became a mum to a whole bunch of other teenagers.
Yes, by that stage I had grey hair, so I was actually a grandma.
Oh, okay, a grandma, and I'm sure they appreciated that.
Yes,
as well.
yeah, well, because they hadn't had that in their life either. And at Baptist Care, I think they were fairly careful that in each team they would have somebody that was older, as well as the young people, you know, so...
Yeah, just in case it had sort of maybe bad experiences of a mother figure, so that, there was an older person there to help with that stuff.
Yeah, so that was quite rewarding. And I did that till I retired. When I started at 65, enough's enough. Okay. It's time to pack it in.
Right. So you put your feet up and life was...
oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
Sounds like it, yeah.
And it hasn't actually worked out like that.
Okay, so what did retirement look like for you?
Oh, well, I made the mistake of going to an AGM many years ago to Partners of Veterans, because I had become a member, as my current husband is a veteran, and ended up coming out as the secretary.
Good job.
Good Partners of Veterans.
Yes, Partners of Veterans. And it's a recognised ex-service organisation, and our role is to look after partners and families. We have all sorts of things that we do. We like to lobby governments for things, and I can talk about some of the stuff that's happened over the years.
Yeah, please tell us.
It's just things. We're nationally affiliated, so every state has a local state body, and currently I'm president. I was secretary for 5 years, and I'm president now, and it's coming up for 6 years. And so, luckily for me, over the years of doing all the work that I did, and I understood the legalities of running something. Like, it's just not a mother's club with $20 or $30 in the bank, you know, like it's and things have moved on, and so you have to be legal. So we had to redo the constitution and do a few other things which I understood needed to be done, and I had the skills to do. The positions that I'd had over the years brought all those skills together for Partners of Veterans. That's how I feel about it. So
sounds like it as well.
Yes. We've just redone quite a few things that needed to be done.
So what does lobbying the government for something look
like?
At
the moment, a couple of years ago, we had a member, and this lady's still a member, and she's a school teacher. And she said it would be so good if we had a tick box on the education form, so that when school teacher knows that that's a military family. Is there a military background? Tick, that's it. So we've lobbied, and it's been passed in principle, except COVID stuffed it up. So like it has a lot of other stuff. Yes. So we have now started lobbying again. We have a new minister in the state, and I've spoken to him about that already, and he's quite keen. And
so can just anybody lobby the government for anything, or what?
Usually what happens is the member put that up to us as our state board, and our state board put that up as an agenda item for the national board. Okay. They took it all up, and it went to ESORT, which is an overall body in the government. Come back down, said yes, it's a good idea, and at that stage, Stephen Marshall was our Veterans Affairs person, and he just said, I agree with that, Chris. It's a great thing to do. And then, of course, you know, things have all gone a bit haywire the last couple of years. We're getting back on track. So that's one that we're going to continue fighting about. I know the girls before, they have lobbied the government about the funeral benefit. So when our partners pass away, and it depends on the criteria, of course, there's a funeral benefit that comes. And so they lobbied to get that raised not long ago, 10 years ago now. So now they're re-lobbying again, saying funerals have gone up. You know, so this is for veterans that die of their injuries. So that's another thing that they've lobbied for. There was something to do with the War Widows Extra. I don't understand much about the War Widows Extra benefit that they get for certain things. They've lobbied for that. So there's just little things. There's nothing earth-shattering, but it helps families. It's families, yes. At the moment, we're lobbying on a national level. We're doing a big health survey of all our partners all across Australia, and lobbying to try and get some sort of a health card for partners, so that we're hooked somehow to partners as partners, because a few years ago I had to have a hip replacement and I waited 3 years for that. And in the meantime, you're still looking after your partner and veteran. He's panicking because you're not well, and it all gets a bit messy. To just not to go up the list a bit quicker. Like I haven't got any private cover, so I'm just in the public system, so I have to sit and wait. And that's something that we're trying to organise, because in the meantime, we're still trying to keep our veterans healthy and happy. And it just puts extra stress on them as well as us. So, but that's one thing that they're doing at the moment. And
well, we will come back and we're going to hear more about, there's some things on the table. So if you are watching this interview, you would have seen them already. If you're listening, make sure you jump online and watch this interview as well. So we will be back straight after this. This is Life Bursts with Matt and Sarah. Welcome back to Life Bursts with Matt and Sarah. Before we went to the break, I said that there were some things on the table, so make sure that you do go and watch Life Bursts online, the video format of it. Now, talk us through what you have here on the table. You can pick up one at a time and show it to the camera. You can choose which one you start with, Chris.
Okay.
You can pick whichever one.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll just pop this one up. It's It's the national flyer for the Partners of Veterans Association. And wherever you go in Australia, you'll see one of these, and you'll know that partners are around. I joined that because my husband's a veteran, and because of my work background in social work, it was something that I was really interested in. And I can assure you I have learnt so much since I've been there. I didn't really know much about the military, but I do now. So,
do you and your husband talk in like at 1,500 hours? We'll go through this.
No, he doesn't actually. Okay. He doesn't. No. Yes, I know, but not at home. Possibly when he's out, I don't know. But yes, not at home. No.
It's not like 700 hours.
Exactly.
Wake up.
Yeah. What's this for? Yeah. So yeah.
Now, for those who can't have a copy of the brochure, there is a website, pva.org.au, which are Partners of Veterans.
Yes.
PVA, so they'll be able to head there and find out some more information.
Yes, head there, and if you're in South Australia, there's a link to all of the states, which will show you the things that are happening around the place. We have social groups that meet. We have one in the Riverland, we've got one in Clare, we've got one down in Victor Harbour Way, we've got one in the southern suburbs, we've got one in the northern suburbs.
Right,
and they all have coordinators.
Yeah. And
those girls do what they want to do, but they usually meet monthly, although some of them now are meeting fortnightly. So, and they just decide themselves what they're going to do. And as president, I try and get to every one of them during the year for some reason. So, and just go for a visit.
So you are president now. We skipped that step. Is that
yes,
right?
yes, I am.
So you've
still
moved from secretary to president.
Yes, to president.
Okay.
Yes, so 5 years as secretary, and then this is 6 years that I've done as president. So,
and we should mention too, not only do you have that honorary title as president, but you also received an award as well, recognition for your service to the community.
Yes, I did. Last year, I was awarded an OAM for my services to veterans and their families. It came quite a surprise. I was not expecting it. And it's really lovely because it's a man that my husband plays bowls with who knows nothing about military. But we all just go and have teas and things together at the bowls club and just talk about what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so he's snuck around behind my back And I do know that my resume was missing for a while, and it turned up. I went looking for it and I couldn't find it, but it turned up and I didn't take any notice of it.
Yeah.
So, and that's how come they've got me. Yes.
Okay, well, congratulations.
Yes, thank you very much. It was, yes.
And I'm sure you've only shared with us, the tip of the iceberg to the things you've done as you've served over the years.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So,
To get an Order of Australia medal is a very high honour and privilege that not many people receive.
no, they don't. And I'm sure there's more deserving people.
And that's what somebody with an OAM said.
They're out there that never ever get a nomination. You know, like there's people do lots of lovely stuff. So our other brochure that I've got here is also our state one that we put out for marketing sort of. So if you see one of those around,
For those who stand beside them.
yes. And that's yes, and that's our motto now. We're the ones that stand beside them and get them through whatever they have to get through.
What's the hardest thing about being a partner of a veteran?
It's a little bit different because you can never tell, like when something will trigger somebody, you just don't know. I was actually in hospital once and a nurse was seeing to me, and that was a long time ago, and she just said her husband was in the Air Force in New Zealand. And of course we got chatting, and she said we went to the shops when he first came back. They came from New Zealand back to South Australia because she's a South Australian girl, and they went shopping and he just freaked completely and went. He couldn't stand it in the shop. And she'd not seen it before, hadn't seen it after, but it was just that particular time. So something must have happened that triggered something, so, and military families, that comes back, things that have happened. Some people don't even speak about it.
Yeah.
For years and years and years and years, and then all of a sudden there's some sort of a trigger, or they get sick, or something happens, and it just brings it all back to them. So, so it's not an easy road for veterans, and it's sort of, and it comes back as a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Families, yes.
Yeah, so really important that you're able to band together and talk about these things with each other.
Yes, well, and I must point out that when we do our social groups, they are purely social.
Right, yes.
We don't get there and nitpick about our men. We have a call number here, is 1300 553 835, and that is a crisis line which somebody will answer whenever it's rung, and that's across Australia. So if it comes to my phone at home, if I'm not there, it'll bounce somewhere else and somebody else will answer it. So and we have to do training, DBA training and stuff to be able to be on that. So so we've done all that as well. So so then on top of that we do offer the welfare services. And then it's just within the groups where people have been meeting, you meet all the time, every month you sit and have a chat. You sit next to somebody and you twig with them, like you really twig when you get on, so that if there's some sort of a problem, I could just ring that person. I don't have to ring everybody else, or they can ring the helpline. And most of our members know they could ring me. So, and I'm in the process of mentoring somebody through that training at the moment, so there'll be another person. So.
Wow.
Well done. Well done.
Fantastic.
This has been an awesome interview. Sad that we've come to an end, but we do have one final question that I'm sure you're going to be answered really simply. In the last 1 minute of our show today, Chris, if you had one piece of advice to share with those who are listening and watching today, what would that be?
My mum was a really wise lady, and after the breakup of my first marriage, I was angry, of course, and felt like I wanted to get back. But her advice to me was, just go on and have a really good life and prove yourself to be better than that person. You don't need to get back. You can just go on and have a good life, and you just prove to everybody that you're a good person. And so I sort of took that advice and yeah.
Well, and I think you've lived that out.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Chris, thanks so much for sharing your advice, but also your story, and for what you continue to do, encouraging others. You've had a life well lived.
Yes, thank you very much.
This interview, I'm sure, will be very encouraging to lots of people who are watching and listening. And this has been Life Bursts with Matt and Sarah. You can catch up with us wherever you get your podcasts from, on YouTube and Facebook, and of course, community TV and radio. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Matt. Thanks again for joining us.
Life Bursts is hosted by Matthew Karat and Sarah Freeman, with production by Reese Jarrett and Kay Hoshraw Ozadigan. For more episodes of Life Bursts, go to rawcut.com.au. This is a RawCut production.